Smart cities represent a forward-thinking approach to urban living, harnessing digital technologies and data to optimize services, reduce waste, and improve quality of life. By integrating sensors, wireless networks, and real-time data, these cities can efficiently manage resources like energy and transportation. This not only streamlines city operations, but also plays a crucial role in combating climate change. Engaging citizens in these initiatives further enhances effectiveness, making smart cities vital in the fight for a sustainable, resilient future. Smart city and climate change. A smart city is an urban area that utilizes digital technology and data collection to improve city services and enhance the quality of life for its residents. This involves using technologies like the Internet of Things, IoT, and information and communication technologies, ICT, to optimize city operations and provide better services, including transportation, energy management, waste disposal, and public safety. The principal objective of this paper is to find out how smart technologies can help with urban planning and how citizen engagement can improve the effectuality of this application. Content analysis from databases like Greenfile and Scopus, a total of 6 articles, that are related to smart cities and urban planning were selected for the study. Additionally, MATLAB was used to design a simple concept indicating the relationship between various social amenities or individual gadgets and sensors that help to regulate the amount of energy used. Quantitative survey was also carried out using Google Forms circulated to a sample population of £50 after a Facebook campaign of this study that took 2 weeks. The results indicated that smart technologies significantly help to reduce the levels of carbon footprint for individuals, as well as for corporations. A sample calculation to prove the functionality of the MATLAB equation gave an output of cut down supply and issue warning, using a consumption rate, CE, of 2% and programmed rates, PR, of 10. Originality, value. The use of smart technologies in the planning or urban centres can contribute a great deal in global environmental conservation efforts. The study concludes that smart technologies are an important factor in urban planning and in the fight against global warming and climate change, and that citizens or human beings are also an important part of this success. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural due to changes in the sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions. But since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. Burning fossil fuels generates greenhouse gas emissions that act like a blanket wrapped around the Earth, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. The main greenhouse gases that are causing climate change include carbon dioxide and methane. These come from using gasoline for driving a car or coal for heating a building, for example. Clearing land and cutting down forests can also release carbon dioxide. Agriculture, oil and gas operations are major sources of methane emissions. Energy, industry, transport, buildings, agriculture and land use are among the main sectors causing greenhouse gases. The World Health Organization, in a study carried out to determine the rate of the urban population growth, indicates that the development of smart cities is at the forefront of climate change initiative to help achieve the sustainable development. With the world becoming more and more urbanized, there is a need to tackle the issue of climate change currently being experienced due to this rapid growth in urban areas. 75% of the global carbon dioxide emissions emanate from cities, with industries and transport being the major contributors. To this effect, governments all over the world have since embraced the concept of smart cities, which has proven to be very efficient. This concept entails the use of an array of sensors, wireless networks, and other internet-based programs to collect information in cities and use that information in the management and distribution of resources, as well as in the provision of services efficiently. In accordance with this study's discussion is that the increase in temperatures globally has led to a subsequent rise in the cases of extreme weather occurrences. These events have very adverse effects on the sustainability and growth of cities, hence hindering urbanization. With this in mind, there is need to develop a dynamic framework that can be integrated into cities and urban areas, that not only caters for such extreme events, but also reduces the effects of urbanization on climate while providing services and enabling management of resources efficiently. Previously, smart cities have just utilized digital frameworks that use collected data within cities to manage and distribute resources and provide services more conveniently and efficiently to the citizens. The issue of combating climate change is neglected, which has led to the global climatic changes that have been experienced. Through this research, we have come up with an integrated dynamic framework that encompasses the transformation of the existing digital structure and the involvement of the public through citizen engagement. The recommendations in this paper, as well as the simulation model designed, aim to reduce the effects caused by climate changes and reduce the impact of urbanization on climate, while providing the same services and advantages offered by a smart city. By minimizing these effects, the cases of extreme weather occurrences will reduce significantly, as will the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Subsequently, the current rise in global temperatures and its adverse effects on the environment will also reduce. The losses incurred and damages caused by the extreme weather conditions due to climate changes will, therefore, be eliminated, paving the way for even further urbanization and development. To analyze the effects of climate change on urbanization and development, to evaluate the contribution of digitalization and citizen engagement in risk prevention due to climate changes in smart cities. What are some of the challenges facing the development of cities with regards to climate changes? In what ways can digitalization and citizen engagement assist in reducing the adverse effects of climate change, which pose a risk to cities and the development of smart cities? Climate change is a significant problem affecting various cities and countries all over the globe. Even in this digital era and the emergence of smart cities, cases of extreme weather events are on the rise, and such occurrences are responsible for countless losses in terms of destruction of property and more. This has led to the use of emerging scientific methods and technology to combat the challenges arising from climate change to curb these losses. Many researchers have focused on the use of digital frameworks to detect changes in climate early and therefore forecast the occurrence of extreme weather events. GIFing, for instance, on the development of a global smart city platform solution that focuses on the challenges posed by climate change and how to eliminate the same proceeds to give 4 clear-cut areas through which the implementation of climate-smart cities could be carried out. Several studies targeted at combating the challenges caused by climate change emphasize on the need to use digital technology and communication systems to address matters of climate, while at the same time maintaining the economic sustainability of the city. The need to modify the existing digital frameworks to increase its efficiency and meet the changing climatic condition all over the world has intensified. The application of this digital transformation in managing the effects of climate change has sparked various researchers to look for ways to implement the same. For instance, the implementation of smart building technology within smart cities will provide a lot of information that can be used to combat climate change. According to research carried out by the United Nations, 39% of the global carbon dioxide emissions responsible for global warming come from buildings, the built environment. Several researchers have also pointed out the use of renewable energy sources and energy-saving technological appliances in a bid to reduce effects on climate and at the same time maintain sustainability. Citizen engagement is a powerful force in shaping public policies and addressing the pressing issue of climate change within urban environments. By involving residents in decision-making, cities can better respond to community concerns and improve quality of life. Digital tools now make it easier than ever for people to participate, ensuring diverse voices are heard. Combining technology with civic involvement creates innovative pathways to reduce carbon emissions and build sustainable, resilient cities for future generations. Involving citizens in making decisions that concern public policies within cities is vital in addressing the causes of public concern on various matters and promoting the general quality of life within the community. Citizen engagement is also an essential tool when it comes to reducing the effects of climate change, according to researchers. There has been an increase in media coverage of climate-related disasters and an increase in protests, and the public is speaking out against practices that have adverse effects on climate. More researchers have listed civic engagement as one of the nature-based approaches to combat climate change in urban areas, which brings about easier and manageable ways to achieve the same. And citizen engagement can occur in many forms, and it is essential to ensure that the methods used in engagement should yield positive effects and have a positive impact on the subject. The integration of digitalization in civic engagement is also vital in reaching even more citizens and allowing them to be involved in the decision-making process. The importance of digital transformation and citizen engagement as tools in the fight against climate change is undeniable. Research has been done on the same, and the facts and figures above indeed show their importance. Designing a framework that utilizes them together can prove to be a revolutionary step. Climate changes. Climate change is currently a pivotal issue whose implications are continuously being felt globally. From simple shifts in weather patterns to extreme cases such as floods and drought which lead to death and destruction of property, climate change could cause a lot of harm if not addressed in a proper manner. This has prompted researchers all over the world to come up with articles and proposals on how to deal with climate change. The causes of the recent rise in climate change have been highlighted as industrialization, according to most researchers. The concentration of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is directly linked to the global temperatures currently being experienced, and a rise in their concentration causes a subsequent rise in the global temperature. The impact of climate change all over the world prompted governments, states, and researchers to come up with and adopt measures of tackling the same. Researchers have backed the launching of the Kyoto Protocol, which was adopted by developing and developed countries. The protocol requires the countries to find ways that reduce carbon emissions into the atmosphere and even set targets for the specific countries. The United Nations came up with the Paris Agreement, which is also geared towards the sustainability and implementation of low-carbon emissions. Its aim is to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius and, in this way, reduce global warming, hence reducing the rapid changes in climate caused by the same. The impact of climate change on humans and the environment is huge, and there needs to be even more effort to solve the crisis. The use of technology to guide urbanization so as to reduce climate change while also sustaining development is also fundamental in combating the same. Coming up with a method that incorporates all this into one is crucial in finally being able to reduce global warming, carbon dioxide emissions, and the extreme weather conditions caused by climate change. Climate change is currently a pivotal issue whose implications are continuously being felt globally. From simple shifts in weather patterns to extreme cases such as floods and drought, which lead to death and destruction of property, climate change could cause a lot of harm if not addressed in a proper manner. This has prompted researchers all over the world to come up with articles and proposals on how to deal with climate change. The causes of the recent rise in climate change have been highlighted as industrialization, according to most researchers. The concentration of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is directly linked to the global temperatures currently being experienced, and a rise in their concentration causes a subsequent rise in the global temperature. The impact of climate change all over the world prompted governments, states, and researchers to come up with and adopt measures of tackling the same. Researchers have backed the launching of the Kyoto Protocol, which was adopted by developing and developed countries. The protocol requires the countries to find ways that reduce carbon emissions into the atmosphere and even set targets for the specific countries. The United Nations came up with the Paris Agreement, which is also geared towards the sustainability and implementation of low-carbon emissions. Its aim is to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius and, in this way, reduce global warming, hence reducing the rapid changes in climate caused by the same. The impact of climate change on humans and the environment is huge, and there needs to be even more effort to solve the crisis. The use of technology to guide urbanization so as to reduce climate change while also sustaining development is also fundamental in combating the same. Coming up with a method that incorporates all this into one is crucial in finally being able to reduce global warming, carbon dioxide emissions, and the extreme weather conditions caused by climate change. The principal research technique used to come up with this project was content analysis and the use of conceptual models that relied on the use of the software MATLAB. Since climate change is an interdisciplinary matter, we gathered information from various disciplines, including history, geography, computer science, civil and structural engineering, and environmental science. This was from various databases like Scopus and Greenline. This study revealed the causes of climate change and extreme weather events, their effects, and the available interventions that have been set in place to counter these effects. Based on the understanding of the causes and effects, we were able to build better around the idea of smart cities, in a bid to help reduce the effects of climate change on the environment. The methods of reducing either the effects or the causes of climate change were written down in a manner that related the cause to its subsequent solution. A short quantitative study also was done to establish the perception of the study population regarding citizen participation and engagement by their governments when it came to matters of environmental conservation. MATLAB was used to design a computational model so as to achieve an effective representation of a dynamic framework for smart cities that reduces the effects of climate change through digitalization and citizen engagement. A sample population of 50 respondents from the Cairo was selected after posting an online campaign that lasted for 2 weeks about this survey. From 1,500 applications, and using random selection, we were able to select the 50 respondents who all participated in the final study. This quantitative survey was necessary in determining the impact of citizen engagement in smart city initiatives. The respondents participated online through questionnaires distributed to them, with only 5 questions to answer. 3 were closed-ended and 2 were open-ended, to find out their opinions concerning citizen participation in environmental matters in Cairo and what their perception was about smart cities. The questionnaire was designed online using Google Forms, and the campaign was run on Facebook alone as a social media application, since a larger percentage of respondents in the study area relied on this platform for communication purposes. Data analysis was conducted using Excel to generate graphs that highlighted relationships between key variables in the questionnaire. For content analysis, responses were grouped into themes to identify major patterns. MATLAB was then employed to simulate different scenarios, adjusting consumption rates and programmed limits. Through this process, 3 main insights emerged: the vital link between digital transformation and citizen engagement, the dual approach to climate change, and the necessity for a robust computational model to support smart city initiatives. Data analysis took the form of Excel to produce graphs that illustrated relationships between the various variables examined in the questionnaire. When it came to content analysis, responses recorded were analyzed thematically, and finally, MATLAB was used to analyze various scenarios using varying quantities of consumption rate, nalysis, and programmed rates, PR. Maths calculation and results. conceptual model, realizations, and resolutions. In the course of the study, we arrived at 3 fundamental realizations that had not been made in previous work done. First, there is an important correlation between digital transformation and proper citizen engagement in the development of a functional smart city with regards to climate change. Secondly, combating climate change has 2 significant aspects: reducing its causes and reducing its adverse effects. Finally, the development of a computational model should accurately cover the dynamics of a smart city framework as a composite system. We decided to use a smart city as a basis for the development of our framework for 2 reasons. First, cities account for approximately 70% of the global carbon dioxide emissions, which is responsible for global warming. Secondly, with the current rate of urbanization, 70% of the world's population will be living in cities in the next 30 years. Therefore, it is important to develop a system that reduces the effects of climate change and therefore maintain a conducive environment to live in without hampering urbanization. MATLAB equation: C equals 2, percent consumption, depends on energy in use, PR equals 10, percent programmed rates, K, S equal PR, C, if S, 1. Cut down, supply and issue warning, else, system should function normally, end, S, MATLAB code, T final equals 2, N equal 33, S at final at N, T linspace, arrow, T final, N plus 1. Percent type, help linspace. To see how this works, ya zeros, 1 sun, N plus 1, Y exact 9, 3T, 1 plus 10, XP 3, Y1, EL 1, percent setting the initial number of people for example 1, yo YN plus H, YN, 3, TN, YN, end plot, TIET, exact, X label, T, Y label, Y, title, look ma, I solved a number of citizens in MATLAB, error 1, abs, M plus 1, Y exact, N plus 1, NE66, T final, N, T linspace, 0, final, N plus 1. Percent type help linspace. To see how this works, ye zeros 1 pond N plus 1, Y exact 9, 3 sud, 1 plus 10, XP 3, Y1, eta 1, percent, setting the initial condition for N1, N plus 1, E, Y, N, plus H, Y, N, 3, T, N, N, end plot, T, Y, T, exact, X label, T, Y label, Y, title, look ma, I solved an ODE in MATLAB, error 2, abs IM plus 1, exact M plus 1, print. The error went down by a factor of then error 1, error 2. The non-autonomous equation. The non-autonomous equation that was used to determine some of these values over a given time are as follows, and as presented in a graph. The chat is presented below. dx dt t 2 x x 3. In coming up with simulation model of a smart city, we came up with a general equation that would help explain the core relationship existing between the various entities in an urban environment relying on such a model. Ultimately, the relationship is supposed to result in environmental conservation in all instances, principally by watching how much energy is consumed at every particular time and then creating the right stimuli to prevent overconsumption that might result in wastage. The MATLAB equation, for instance, explains that in the case that sensors placed in various urban utilities like hospitals, large corporate buildings, and hotels detects that the programmed maximum use of energy is surpassed, Then the immediate response is that the supply of energy is cut down, and the user is issued with a warning, as seen in the first output of the MATLAB equation, that is, cut down supply and issue warning. The best warning that can come from can be, "Dear friend, please note that you have surpassed the normal consumption. Please try to regulate it as a personal environmental conservation initiative." This is applicable, for example, in the event that people in an office are using more than one printer at the same time. The best approach would be that the office can create a system that suggests use of a central printing location that is easily accessible by everyone, so that everybody can be in a position to print on a need basis. The resultant effect is that the amount of power consumption by more than one printer is reduced to one, and this makes power consumption not just economical, but also environmentally sound. From the analysis of data collected from the online questionnaires, it was clear that most respondents supported smart technologies as the best environmental conservation approach, and this was added to the fact that most of them explained that even though they were not engaged in smart technology initiatives organized by the government, 31 respondents, it was important that the government does this, 29 respondents. Recent research highlights the urgent need for environmental conservation, especially in rapidly urbanizing areas. By analyzing peer-reviewed articles from reputable databases, it becomes clear that smart city technologies play a vital role in addressing climate change and global warming. However, their success depends not only on government policies and urban planning, but also on active citizen participation. As global temperatures continue to rise, it's essential for both governments and individuals to work together, adopting sustainable practices to protect our planet's future. Research from various databases with environmental conservation publications, we were able to find 50 articles that were related to the topic of study. The key words used included smart technologies and urbanization. The databases used for the study included Greenline and Scopus, although some literature was also sources from peer-reviewed journals. To narrow down the number, we chose literatures that were peer-reviewed and published only within a period of 5 years before the current year, 2025. This reduced the number to 6 journals that were finally used for the study in coming up with literature review, as well as in analysis of the objective of study. The deduction from this study is that climate change and global warming have fast-advancing effects that need to be countered early enough before they can hurt the world's economic, social, and political setup any further. Smart cities, even if not the only intervention to help with environmental conservation, is a paramount approach to ecology that governments need to consider so as to participate effectively in the global initiatives meant to decrease the effects of global warming and climate change. The governments are at the top of influence when it comes to enforcing laws that make urban planning a mandatory aspect for every city, whether already existing or upcoming. However, as the topic of citizen engagement is discussed in the paper, citizen participation in matters that involve global warming is also very important, as the citizens at the individual level are the ones that make the components of smart cities work. They are the ones that operate smart city technologies, and if they have a negative attitude towards ecological conservation, smart city initiatives might not work. It is important, therefore, that governments, through environmental campaigns, educate their citizens on the importance and urgency of environmental conservation so that urban planning initiatives can be a success. Climate scientists have showed that humans are responsible for virtually all global heating over the last 200 years. Human activities like the ones mentioned above are causing greenhouse gases that are warming the world faster than at any time in at least the last 2,000 years. The average temperature of the Earth's surface is now about 1.2 degrees C, warmer than it was in the late 1800s, before the Industrial Revolution, and warmer than at any time in the last 100,000 years. The last decade, 2011-2020, was the warmest on record, and each of the last 4 decades has been warmer than any previous decade since 1850. Many people think climate change mainly means warmer temperatures. But temperature rise is only the beginning of the story. Because the Earth is a system where everything is connected, changes in one area can influence changes in all others. The consequences of climate change now include, among others, intense droughts, water scarcity, severe fires, rising sea levels, flooding, melting polar ice, catastrophic storms, and declining biodiversity. Climate change can affect our health, ability to grow food, housing, safety, and work. Some of us are already more vulnerable to climate impacts, such as people living in small island nations and other developing countries. Conditions like sea level rise and saltwater intrusion have advanced to the point where whole communities have had to relocate, and protracted droughts are putting people at risk of famine. In the future, the number of people displaced by weather-related events is expected to rise. In a series of UN reports, thousands of scientists and government reviewers agreed that limiting global temperature rise to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius would help us avoid the worst climate impacts and maintain a livable climate. Yet policies currently in place point to up to 3.1 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century. The emissions that cause climate change come from every part of the world and affect everyone, but some countries produce much more than others. The 6 biggest emitters, China, the United States of America, India, the European Union, the Russian Federation, and Brazil, together accounted for more than half of all global greenhouse gas emissions in 2023. By contrast, the 45 least developed countries accounted for only 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Many climate change solutions can deliver economic benefits while improving our lives and protecting the environment. We also have global frameworks and agreements to guide progress, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Paris Agreement. 3 broad categories of action are cutting emissions, adapting to climate impacts, and financing required adjustments. Switching energy systems from fossil fuels to renewables like solar or wind will reduce the emissions driving climate change. But we have to act now. While a growing number of countries is committing to net zero emissions by 2050, emissions must be cut in half by 2030 to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Achieving this means huge declines in the use of coal, oil, and gas. Production and consumption of all fossil fuels need to be cut by at least 30% by 2030 in order to prevent catastrophic levels of climate change. Adapting to climate consequences protects people, homes, businesses, livelihoods, infrastructure, and natural ecosystems. It covers current impacts and those likely in the future. Adaptation will be required everywhere, but must be prioritized now for the most vulnerable people with the fewest resources to cope with climate hazards. The rate of return can be high. Early warning systems for disasters, for instance, save lives and property and can deliver benefits up to 10 times the initial cost. More than half of the world's population lives in cities, and most future population growth is predicted to happen in urban areas. But the concentration of large numbers of people and the ecosystems built around their lives has also been a driver of climate change. Cities are responsible for 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, according to a new report from the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. And they are highly exposed to many of the impacts of the climate change they contribute to, in particular heat stress, flooding, and health emergencies. Making cities more resilient, sustainable, inclusive, and safe is one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 11, requiring sustained investment. By becoming more climate smart, as the UN calls it, cities can combat the mounting pressure of climate change they both cause and suffer from. Ultimately, improving the urban infrastructure in this way, cities can enhance their resilience, reduce climate risk, and increase livability and competitiveness. Building climate-smart cities can involve a vast range of measures depending on the location's needs, from flood defences and drainage canals to electrified transport and the creation of green spaces for urban cooling. Over the past few years, Chile's capital, Santiago de Chile, has bought 455 electric buses and plans to raise this to nearly 800 by the end of 2020. The e-buses do not generate emissions through their operation, reducing air pollution and its associated impact on human health and productivity. Air conditioning and a quieter ride are also popular with Santiago's public transport users. Latin America's first electric corridor now operates along one of Santiago's major transport axes, the International Energy Agency, IEA, reports. It is only served by e-buses and consists of bus stops using solar panels to power free Wi-Fi, USB charging, and LED lighting, further adding to the attractiveness of the e-bus network for users. The e-buses also help the local government to reduce operational expenditure. They cost an impressive 70% less to operate and maintain than diesel-powered buses, offsetting their higher cost of purchase, which is nearly double that of a conventional bus. These huge reductions may also lead to lower fares, which could encourage more people to use public transport. Chile is rapidly advancing its electrification goals, investing in both private and public transportation to build a cleaner future. With a recent tender for 2,000 more electric buses, the country is expanding its e-bus network beyond Santiago, already South America's largest. At the same time, cities worldwide are exploring hydroponic farming to address food security, using water-based systems to increase yields and save resources. Innovative funding models, like Mexico's reef insurance scheme, highlight the growing importance of climate-smart infrastructure. Chile has electrification targets for both private and public transport and has put substantial effort into building demand for EVs and charging infrastructure. Its transport minister has recently issued a tender for the procurement of 2,000 more e-buses, and the project is set to be extended to other cities in Chile. Earth-orbiting satellites and new technologies have helped scientists see the big picture, collecting many different types of information about our planet and its climate all over the world. These data, collected over many years, reveal the signs and patterns of a changing climate. Climate change is our planet's greatest existential threat. If we don't limit greenhouse gas emissions from the burning of fossil fuels, the consequences of rising global temperatures include massive crop and fishery collapse, the disappearance of hundreds of thousands of species, and entire communities becoming uninhabitable. While these outcomes may still be avoidable, climate change is already causing suffering and death. From raging wildfires and supercharged storms, its compounding effects can be felt today, outside our own windows. Understanding these impacts can help us prepare for what's here, what's avoidable, and what's yet to come, and to better prepare and protect all communities. Even though everyone is or will be affected by climate change, those living in the world's poorest countries, which have contributed least to the problem, are the most climate vulnerable. They have the fewest financial resources to respond to crises or adapt, and they're closely dependent on a healthy, thriving natural world for food and income. Similarly, in the United States, it is most often low-income communities and communities of color that are on the front lines of climate impacts. And because climate change and rising inequality are interconnected crises, decision-makers must take action to combat both, and all of us must fight for climate justice. Here's what you need to know about what we're up against. Although more than 9 out of 10 electric buses in 2019 were registered in China, South America is a major growth market for e-buses, according to the IEA. Santiago's e-fleet is the largest, but cities in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador also operate electric buses. As the number of urban dwellers grows, feeding them is likely to become an ever greater challenge, By 2050, it is expected that 80% of all food will be consumed in cities. Where space is limited for traditional farming or the climate makes it difficult to grow sufficient food, hydroponic farming could be one solution. Hydroponics is a water-based farming process that feeds plants nutrient-rich water, rather than them being planted in soil. Because roots don't have to burrow into the ground, hydroponically farmed plants take up a smaller footprint and can be stacked vertically. By carefully controlling the plant's environment and nutrient intake, hydroponic farming can not only increase yield by a factor of 10 per hectare, but it can also make better use of resources, reducing waste, water usage, pesticides and fertilizers, compared with traditional farming methods. Being indoors, they are less affected by pests and weather events, and crops can be grown close to where they will be consumed. This can save food miles and associated emissions, according to the UN report. Abu Dhabi is now providing $100 million in funding to build a vertical farm of over 8,200 square meters for both research and development and the commercialization of crops. The objective for the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, which has granted the funding, is to turn sand into farmland, boost local food production, and accelerate the growth of its agricultural technology ecosystem. The facility will house 4 different vertical farming companies, whose initiatives will include indoor tomato cultivation, the development of an irrigation system, and an R&D centre. When hedging against climate risk, natural solutions can be important elements in a city's sustainable infrastructure. Coral reefs are a case in point, serving as natural barriers against hazards such as ocean surges and flooding. They can absorb as much wave energy as seawalls and breakwaters, which are less durable. The UNDP report says reefs and other natural defences are less costly to maintain than man-made solutions and could save as much as $100 billion in cases of natural disasters. However, it says 20% of reefs have been lost globally and another 15% are in danger, and funding for their restoration and maintenance is limited, and such initiatives only happen on a small scale. In Mexico, the UNDP is now piloting an insurance scheme to protect and boost the Mesoamerican reef, the second largest globally, as a natural defense and as a source of income for coastal populations. Reef to Resilience is similar to a trust fund that local businesses pay into. The role of the fund is twofold. It invests in restoring and maintaining the reef, so it can offer better natural protection, and it pays for catastrophe insurance so that the reef and its surrounding ecosystem can recover quickly after a natural disaster, ensuring future protection and protecting the livelihoods of coastal communities. An extension of the project to the Caribbean and Asia is being discussed. Climate-smart infrastructure as an investment opportunity. Climate-smart urban infrastructure, whether technology-driven or natural, represents a $30 trillion investment opportunity, ranging from renewable energy to public transport, and from electric vehicles to green buildings, the report says. And that's just in developing economies. New funding models, policies, and risk assessment will be needed to overcome barriers to investment and bring out the long-term value of climate-smart infrastructure for growing urban populations. As global temperatures climb, widespread shifts in weather systems occur, making events like droughts, hurricanes, and floods more intense and unpredictable. Extreme weather events that may have hit just once in our grandparents' lifetimes are becoming more common in ours. However, not every place will experience the same effects. Climate change may cause severe drought in one region while making floods more likely in another. Already the planet has warmed 1.1 degrees Celsius, 1.9 degrees Fahrenheit, since the pre-industrial era began 250 years ago, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. And scientists warn it could reach a worst-case scenario of 4 degrees Celsius, (7.2 degrees Fahrenheit) by 2100 if we fail to tackle the causes of climate change, namely the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. This change in global average temperature, seemingly small but consequential in climbing, means that, each summer, we are likely to experience increasingly sweltering heat waves. Even local news meteorologists are starting to connect strings of record-breaking days to new long-term trends, which are especially problematic in regions where infrastructure and housing have not been built with intensifying heat in mind. And heat waves aren't just uncomfortable. They're the leading cause of weather-related fatalities in the United States. Hotter temperatures increase the rate at which water evaporates from the air, leading to more severe and pervasive droughts. Already, climate change has pushed the American West into a severe mega-drought, the driest 22-year stretch recorded in at least 200 years, shrinking drinking water supplies, withering crops, and making forests more susceptible to insect infestations. Drought can also create a positive feedback loop in which drier soil and less plant cover cause even faster evaporation. A hotter, drier climate is fueling more intense wildfires, with flames that spread rapidly and burn for longer periods, threatening millions of lives and homes. In the western United States, large wildfires have doubled since the 1980s, and California's annual burned area has surged by 500%. Meanwhile, warmer air holds more moisture, making hurricanes and tropical storms wetter and more powerful, increasing the risk of flooding. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as anywhere else, causing glaciers and sea ice to melt rapidly, which accelerates sea level rise and threatens coastal communities. Oceans absorb most of the planet's excess heat and carbon dioxide, leading to disrupted marine ecosystems, shifting fish migrations, and the acidification that jeopardizes coral reefs and shellfish. This drier, hotter climate also creates conditions that fuel more vicious wildfire seasons, with fires that spread faster and burn longer, putting millions of additional lives and homes at risk. The number of large wildfires doubled between 1984 and 2015 in the western United States. And in California alone, the annual area burned by wildfires increased 500% between 1972 and 2018. Warmer air also holds more moisture, making tropical cyclones wetter, stronger, and more capable of rapidly intensifying. In the latest report from the IPCC, scientists found that daily rainfall during extreme precipitation events would increase by about 7% for each degree Celsius of global warming, increasing the dangers of flooding. The frequency of severe Category 4 and 5 hurricanes is also expected to increase. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey, a devastating Category 4 storm, dumped a record 275 trillion pounds of rain and resulted in dozens of deaths in the Houston area. The effects of climate change are most apparent in the world's coldest regions, the poles. The Arctic is heating up twice as fast as anywhere else on Earth, leading to the rapid melting of glaciers and polar ice sheets, where a massive amount of water is stored. As sea ice melts, darker ocean waters that absorb more sunlight become exposed, creating a positive feedback loop that speeds up the melting process. In just 15 years, the Arctic could be entirely ice-free in the summer. Scientists predict that melting sea ice and glaciers, as well as the fact that warmer water expands in volume, could cause sea levels to rise as much as 6.6 feet by the end of the century should we fail to curb emissions. The extent and pace of this change would devastate low-lying regions, including island nations and densely populated coastal cities like New York City and Mumbai. But sea level rise at far lower levels is still costly, dangerous, and disruptive. According to the 2022 Sea Level Rise Technical Report from the National Ocean Service, the United States will see a foot of sea level rise by 2050, which will regularly damage infrastructure, like roads, sewage treatment plants, and even power plants. Beaches that families have grown up visiting may be gone by the end of the century. Sea level rise also harms the environment, as encroaching seawater can both erode coastal ecosystems and invade freshwater inland aquifers, which we rely on for agriculture and drinking water. Saltwater incursion is already reshaping life in nations like Bangladesh, where 1/4 of the lands lie less than 7 feet above sea level. In addition to coastal flooding caused by sea level rise, climate change influences the factors that result in inland and urban flooding, snowmelt and heavy rain. As global warming continues to both exacerbate sea level rise and extreme weather, our nation's floodplains are expected to grow by approximately 45% by 2100. In 2022, deadly flooding in Pakistan, which inundated as much as a third of the country, resulted from torrential rains mixed with melting glaciers and snow. Oceans are taking the brunt of our climate crisis. Covering more than 70% of the planet's surface, oceans absorb 93% of all the heat that's trapped by greenhouse gases and up to 30% of all the carbon dioxide emitted from burning fossil fuels. Temperature-sensitive fish and other marine life are already changing migration patterns toward cooler and deeper waters to survive, sending food webs and important commercial fisheries into disarray. And the frequency of marine heat waves has increased by more than a third. These spikes have led to mass die-offs of plankton and marine mammals. To make matters worse, the elevated absorption of carbon dioxide by the ocean leads to its gradual acidification, which alters the fundamental chemical makeup of the water and threatens marine life that has evolved to live in a narrow pH band. Animals like corals, oysters, and mussels will likely feel these effects first, as acidification disrupts the calcification process required to build their shells. Land-based ecosystems, from old-growth forests to savannas to tropical rainforests, are faring no better. Climate change is likely to increase outbreaks of pests, invasive species, and pathogen infections in forests. It's changing the kinds of vegetation that can thrive in a given region and disrupting the life cycles of wildlife, all of which is changing the composition of ecosystems and making them less resilient to stresses. While ecosystems have the capacity to adapt, many are reaching the hard limits of that natural capacity. More repercussions will follow as temperatures rise. Climate change appears to be triggering a series of cascading ecological changes that we can neither fully predict nor, once they have enough momentum, fully stop. This ecosystem destabilization may be most apparent when it comes to keystone species that have an outsized role in holding up an ecosystem structure. In a warming world, farming crops is more unpredictable, and livestock, which are sensitive to extreme weather, become harder to raise. Climate change shifts precipitation patterns, causing unpredictable floods and longer-lasting droughts. More frequent and severe hurricanes can devastate an entire season's worth of crops. Meanwhile, the dynamics of pests, pathogens, and invasive species, all of which are costly for farmers to manage, are also expected to become harder to predict. This is bad news, given that most of the world's farms are small and family-run. One bad drought or flood could decimate an entire season's crop or herd. For example, in June 2022, a triple-digit heat wave in Kansas wiped out thousands of cows. While the regenerative agriculture movement is empowering rural communities to make their lands more resilient to climate change, unfortunately, not all communities can equitably access the support services that can help them embrace these more sustainable farming tactics. Healthy soil has good moisture and mineral content and is teeming with bugs, bacteria, fungi, and microbes that in turn contribute to healthy crops. But climate change, particularly extreme heat and changes in precipitation, can degrade soil quality. These impacts are exacerbated in areas where industrial, chemical-dependent monoculture farming has made soil and crops less able to withstand environmental changes. Ultimately, impacts to our agricultural systems pose a direct threat to the global food supply. And food shortages and price hikes driven by climate change will not affect everyone equally. Wealthier people will continue to have more options for accessing food, while potentially billions of others will be plummeted into food insecurity, adding to the billions that already have moderate or severe difficulty getting enough to eat.